painting, the idea of nature unhinged from the storms and the monoprint collage kind of made their way into the paintings. And I did a whole series of fire paintings. I simplified the composition. I still have these sort of square and rectangular elements underneath, but I became obsessed with fire, invoking fire in lots of ways. Fire is a very mesmerizing force of nature to me. I remember like spending, looking at bonfires as a kid. This one's called Backdraft. Here's some work exhibited. You can get a sense of scale. So the works on paper were really small, and the works on canvas were really large. Another example in an exhibition, Amherst. Eventually, I wanted to work with something new in the monoprint. I still love working with those squares, but I wanted to kind of make a larger image. And I wanted to explore gestural mark making in a way that wasn't always all cropped and all cut up. So after a year of trial and error, I decided to reverse my process. And instead of going to the print studio with big blank sheets of paper and making these big drawings that then I cut up, I reversed the process. I decided to work in a matrix, a piece of plexiglass that was 10 inches by 30 inches long, and I was going to put 3 10-inch squares. I was going to use 3 of them on that matrix. And so I went to the print studio, and I always work with a master printer. A master printer is an artist who has amazing technical proficiency in making prints. And I get to be the princess, and they're Cinderella, which was really nice because at home I was always Cinderella, and I felt like I had lived with a bunch of princes. So I go to the print studio, and a master printer, they make sure that everything is perfect with the pressure of the press. They mix up the inks. They help you work through the ideas of what you want to create. And they're there to make you look good, which I loved. So I worked with a master printer, Kathy Caraccio. I've done a number of works with her. I would go to the print studio with pre-cut 10-inch squares of all kinds of paper. I collected paper from all over the world. Anywhere I could find paper, somebody gave me. People would go overseas and bring it home back to me. Hey, Jackie, I found this really interesting paper for you. And I would lay out a whole palette of colors: the reds, the yellows, the blues, the greens, the beiges, things with this, things with that. They would all be laid out. I would make on the plate. I would make a drawing on this piece of plastic. I would do all the drawing, and as soon as I finished the drawing, I would turn to all these sheets of paper laid out, all these squares, and I would pick 3. And we would place the 3 on the plate and run it through the press. And then I would take those pieces of paper home and put them back together and attach them to a beautiful sheet of handmade paper from Twin Rocker. And that's an American paper. I buy American too. It's American paper mill in Indiana. So again, I continued thinking about nature, and so here we get, these are called tide pools, pirouette, emerge, and look at this. I also started working with a graining roller. Has anyone ever used a graining roller? It looks like a little roller, little rubber roller, and incised on relief on the roller is the marks that if you run it through a stain on wood, it makes a faux grain pattern. It's how you take cheap furniture and make it look slightly more expensive, right? Well, I use the graining rule. I would use that in my prints. And so here, if you've seen these marks here, and I wasn't trying to make wood grain, but this was really evocative of water to me. All of a sudden, I started thinking a lot about watermarks. And I also love the way the graining tool interrupts the gesture. Here I had this beautiful black brush mark, and running the graining tool through it started interrupting it and making it move. And just like if I had thrown that paint in the water and then the water was rippling, it would start moving it as well. And so that evocative nature of the water images, it was really special to me. I also started working in a vertical format. Again here, this is a beautiful example of the graining tool really interrupting that gestural, black gesture mark at the top and kind of really creating the idea of this ink falling through down deep into water. You know, in East Asia, there's a lot of references to calligraphy in my work. I've never studied calligraphy. I come out of the sort of abstract, expressionist, American mode of art, but I appreciate it, and I've looked at a lot of Asian art, and I always wanted the gestures to be solely my own. And what's wonderful about in East Asian art, they say that the mark that you make is a direct reflection of your soul. And I thought about that a lot when I would be working at the print studio. I could really feel my own energy when it waved, when it was good, when I was full of doubt. It all came out in the mark. So if I could make what I thought was a perfect mark, I felt perfect inside. The wonderful thing about working with a master printer is they watch very carefully what you're doing in the print studio, and they'll make a suggestion. They make suggestions to you that you may not have thought about. So it is this wonderful little bit of a collaboration. And one day, Kathy Caraccio put two pieces of plexiglass together, and she said, "Jackie, your gestures are getting awfully big. I think you need to work bigger." And I immediately said, "Oh my God, I don't know how to do this." But there I was, painting it. So I did a whole series of diptych prints too, in which we worked much larger. The prints started changing the paintings. And here, in this series of paintings, this one's called Pounding at My Heart, I'm looking at the tripart structure, again, simplifying the composition of the painting. Here's a tsunami painting. The tsunamis in the collages started making me think about a big tsunami. Actually, I painted this painting shortly after my father died in 1995. I spent a whole year painting blue paintings. I guess that's how I worked through my mourning. Here's some exhibits, some shots of exhibitions of those paintings. I brought exhibition shots because you don't get to see the exhibition. You get to see the exhibition of the prints here. I began a meditation practice in 1989. You know, when I quit the Rotunda Gallery to make a living as an artist, it was kind of rocky financially for a few years. It was actually really bloody scary, very scary. I kept thinking, oh my God, what have I done? But, you know, it's really great being married to another painter. We just saw it through. I had to learn how to meditate to stop the panic attacks. But in time, I found that meditation was a great way sitting quietly and allowing my thoughts and the world to flow around me was a really great preparation for painting or for the prints. And these paintings come from my own series where the gestural work on the paper was only a certain scale, even when we tried to get bigger. And on these big paintings, here I was practicing drawing a perfect circle with my entire arm movement. And that's not easy to do. I would spend days just practicing drawing circles with a bucket of water and a brush and on a wall. That, you know, does anybody do it with sidewalks where you take, you know, a wet brush and you paint on the sidewalk and it dries? So I would practice like that. And it was great preparation for going back and working on the gestural work in the print studio. So I was working on, and so this painting, you know, is bigger than I am, and this is my exact arm span, trying to make the perfect gesture, or the perfect spiral. And then I have this painting in here because this led to a whole series of prints, but I didn't know it at the time. I was working on this painting. I had almost everything done in it. And actually, this painting's like a failure. It's not a success. But I keep it because it reminds me of something. I said, oh, I had this brilliant idea. And I thought, this would be perfect right up here. This needs a watermark. And so I approached the painting, and I go and I paint my watermark on that painting. And then I stand back. And you know, when you work on a painting, you're really close, and you don't always know exactly what you get. And then I stepped back and I said, ooh, that really sucks. Jackie, you know nothing about water. You know just because you've been playing with that graining tool doesn't mean you know a thing. So it led this painting. I said, you better go study some water. Well, you know, it's hard to study, to draw water because it moves. So I started photographing water. I'd take my kids and we went to Central Park to the pond, and we'd go to any still water, and I try to go at dusk when the shadows get long and the sun and the skies is devoid of color, because I'd get my best contrast. And the boys would be throwing rocks, pebbles, I say, okay, you got to hit the edge of that shadow, and then I would shoot it. It was like fun. We had lots of fun. I took hundreds and hundreds of water images so I could start studying them. And I painted, I made huge paintings of water images. And for me, it was like a natural progression from the own paintings, the big gesture paintings, into thinking about the big gesture of water. Here is, this painting is 24.5 feet long. This is what it looks like if it's not installed. It's really hard to get a shot of it. You can't get far enough away from it to shoot it. Same way. So here was this great opportunity to look at the water. And then I also wanted to start doing something besides monoprints, and I started doing woodblock. And woodblock is a relief, is relief printing. If you think back to the way printing used to happen, you know, old Gutenberg with the Gutenberg Bible, he carved out the letters, and where the letters are raised and gets inked, that was the typeface. Well, I would work with a plank of wood, draw my watermark on it, and then cut out the image so that what I wanted to print was stayed raised, was not cut away. And then you take a printer's roller, you roll paint over the top of it, and you transfer that image to a sheet of paper. So this water image seemed perfect as it mimics wood grain, and I felt that it really reflected my meditation practice. Because I think of meditation for me is like me sitting quietly next to a roaring river of water that's rippling by, and those are my thoughts, and I'm not getting wet. I'm staying beside the thoughts and just observing them. What's also amazing about the water image, it's about so many things, is that no water ripple is ever duplicated, ever. I mean, it's like no snowflakes ever duplicated. It's kind of a huge idea. So I thought of this series of 4 woodblock prints. I thought about different times of day, and so we have morning, and the palette is arranged. But I did not give up monoprint. All the color that happens underneath all comes from a monoprint. I also did continued the series of woodblock prints on silk, printed on silk that was then collaged to handmade paper. And I had worked so long with the idea of the 3 panels and the monoprints, it felt very natural to kind of bisect this really big, long water image into 3 pages. This piece is called Soundings, and it's me thinking about the kind of depth charges of emotion that often come up during a meditation practice, kind of like sonar through a body of water.